This week we're talking about why music is so important in filmmaking, and I'll also be sharing some tips of how you can improve the music in your films. Hello, my name is Cade and this is DSLRguide. So the first reason why filmmakers should consider music is that music is a hugely important tool in the storytelling process. So for instance, I think that music really can have a huge difference, and most people would agree with me on this, that music has a huge effect on the emotions of the audience. So let's say if in a scene of like an action movie, then it's very often that the music will tell you that this is a bad guy, and it will work with all of the other things like the shots and the dialogue obviously, but it will help to accentuate any of these things. Or if you want the audience to feel scared, the music often plays a big part in that. Or if you want the audience to cry, then again the music is often one of the main things that really helps to kind of seal that deal of let's make the audience feel like this, which will help to get across this idea. So music plays a huge part, and of course there are some times when it can be really obvious, but then there are also hundreds and hundreds of times when it just really quietly mentions little things to the audience, and these are the things that really stack up and make you think, wow, the music was really good in that, although often the best music is really not noticeable at all. So that's my first point, is that music is extremely powerful and that it plays a huge role in kind of making or breaking a scene. That is really often how it is, and a piece of music that doesn't fit the vibe or doesn't fit the timings can really, it offsets comedy. If there's a misplaced hit or something, it can just totally take you out of the moment and you go, wow, that music's a bit silly. Or, it can really help to push the story forward when it's done well. And I think there's a huge amount of skill involved in having a good soundtrack. And that brings me on to my next point, which is that many of us aspiring filmmakers one day hope to be able to work with a composer, someone who specializes in making those decisions about what the music's going to be doing when in this certain scene. So for me at least, I think that having a background in music, even if it's not like you're a proper musician, but just knowing a little bit can really go a long way if you do ever have to communicate with a composer. And when I got the chance to speak with a composer who works on TV and film, he said that that is one of the biggest problems, is that the directors can't communicate what it is they're doing. So they just try and use kind of general words to try and describe it, and that makes the composer's job a lot more difficult. Whereas if they have just a little bit of background in music, then they can use the right words and they can get across their vision for the music a lot better. And I think that's one of the main reasons why you should look into music. But of course you might find that once you actually start looking into music, you find that actually I want to have even more control over it. I don't want to give this to a composer, I don't want to use royalty-free tracks. And then you might decide that you actually want to compose the music yourself. And there are a huge number of benefits to doing this. You can have the vibe of your music totally fit the vibe of your film, or the vibe that you're intending for. You've got a complete creative control if you do the music yourself. And then also you can have the timings exactly how you wanted them. Now of course you could do this with a composer, but I'm going to assume here you're either doing the music yourself or using sites like the Music Bed to download royalty-free music, which of course is totally fine. But I'm just saying that if you do have a custom score, then there are some major benefits, because you can have it exactly how you want it, and you can also match up those timings for lots of different things rather than trying to fit a already made piece of music, trying to kind of cut it up and split it so that it fits your film. And then of course if you do make the music yourself, you don't have to worry at all about copyright laws and getting royalty-free music and making sure that it's all legit. You just know that you made it so you can use it. And that really is a nice benefit to have. Saves you money, although you do obviously have to put in extra time. So what I'm trying to say here is that no matter what kind of way you use music, whether you download music from places like Premium Beat or the Music Bed and get it royalty free, have the license, and then you can use it in your films, which is a very good way of doing it. That is often saves a lot of time, and there really are some good music out there. Or whether you write the music yourself, in which case you have full creative control, or whether you manage to work with a composer. The important thing is that you're taking into consideration what the music is doing and making sure that you are using that as best as you can to tell your stories. because often just grabbing a generic piece of uplifting sounding music and dropping it on your video is not really going to work, and there are often better ways that you can do things. So I'd now like to give you some tips for if you are interested in focusing on music a little bit more and improving the music in your films. And these don't just apply to people who want to write their own music, they also apply to how to choose the best music for your films. So the first one is to watch a movie but really focus on what the music is doing. At what points is it silent? At what point does everything kind of go quiet but let the music really take that scene? At what point, just like really pay attention to, okay, in this scene when there's a dialogue scene, maybe the music was a lot quieter, or in this action scene it was really percussive. There are lots of things like that which you can kind of see where the parallels are, and that I think really helps with what I think is one of the best learning ideas, which is that first you gain an appreciation for what things can do. So in this case, the power of music, and you realize, yes, my film that I did 6 months ago, that wasn't fully utilizing music. So you realize that there's a problem, and then the next step is you look to how other people have done it, and you say, right, okay, well, this person has used music this way, this other person has used it that way, and then you kind of take all of that and you apply it to your films until you then realize that, yes, this is better music than it was before. I don't think it's all about just kind of studying the theory of music. I think the main thing is to realize the potential and then just use that and keep that in the back of your mind while you are choosing music or writing music. Okay, so next up, if you are writing music, I would recommend that you try and separate the creative and the technical parts as much as possible. So let's say you're coming up with the score for a trailer. Well, I would say first start out on the piano or guitar or whatever instrument you prefer to compose with, but do all of the composing or as much as possible on that one instrument, rather than going into Logic or GarageBand or whatever you use and choosing an instrument and then doing it and changing the levels and kind of doing all the different effects, because I think that can be very distracting when you're trying to just make the best music. Because as I've said before, the best music will sound good whether it's played through a full orchestra or the best samples of Logic, or whether it is just on a piano. The thing that I find more and more is that if you do just condense it down to a solo piano piece, it still captures pretty much the whole essence of what the music was trying to do. So I would say when you're writing, don't worry about your plugins, don't worry about anything complicated, just focus on the creative side of the music, the rhythm and the melody and the chords and all the other different elements of music. And then I think that, because there is something about the left side and the right side of your brain, one of them is the creative one of them is the technical one. So I don't know if that comes into it, but just on a basis that you'll be distracted by the technical things, I think it's really good to just, when you're writing, write, and when you're doing the processing and choosing the instruments and stuff, then do that afterwards. Okay, next up, if you are choosing music, I've recently discovered the musicbed.com, which I think is a great place for getting music. They have a lot of really kind of modern genres, which are quite hard to find on some of the free libraries. And of course, while they are a bit expensive, I think music is a valid thing to put some of your budget on. As I've said before, if you're spending thousands on a camera, then you should also consider spending money on your lighting, on your audio, and of course, music, actors, production, stuff like locations and all that kind of stuff, because they are all equally, if not more important than the camera. So I do think that yes, it is kind of expensive, but royalty-free music is worthwhile, and the music bed is a great place to get it. And lastly, I just say that because music is so subjective and covers such a wide berth of different ideas, I think I can't really teach, specific, if this scene is happening, then do this with the music. That stuff, it's to be honest, it's really not teachable. But what you can do is you can practice, you can try out different things, see what works, whether you're writing the music or choosing the music. Take inspiration from movies and from all genres of music, or just anything that you hear music and think, wow, that is really powerful. Just remember that and always have it in the back of your mind when you're making a film. What do I want the music to be doing at this point? And I really do think that just by considering it more than just a kind of really passive, I'll just put that music on because I like the sound of that music, rather than as opposed to actually choosing music which you think fits, I think just having that in the back of your mind, even if you're not completely sure about it, that is just the best step to go. And before you know it, you will be thinking that, yes, I'm very sure that this music works well. And, listening to music is great. Watching films that have good soundtracks is great. I think in the blog post, I'll put a list of scores that I really like listening to. And yeah, so that's it for this week. I'll see you next time.